Helena Blavatsky, the renowned 19th-century mystic and founder of the Theosophical Society, delivered one of her most profound warnings to humanity. Your emotions are not random chemical reactions or psychological quirks. They are the voice of your higher self, attempting to guide you through the labyrinth of earthly existence. In her extensive writings, particularly in The Secret Doctrine and The Voice of the Silence, Blavatsky explained that most humans live disconnected from their true spiritual nature, mistaking the chatter of the lower mind for reality while ignoring the profound wisdom emanating from their emotional centers. According to Blavatsky's teachings, emotions serve as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. When we experience strong emotions, whether joy, sorrow, anger, or love, we're receiving direct communication from our higher self, which exists beyond the limitations of time and space and possesses knowledge about our soul's true purpose. The modern world, Blavatsky warned, would increasingly encourage people to suppress, medicate, or rationalize away their emotions, thereby severing the most direct line of communication with their divine nature. She taught that this disconnection would lead to spiritual stagnation and prevent humanity from evolving toward its intended state of consciousness. Understanding emotions as spiritual guidance requires a fundamental shift in perception. Rather than viewing uncomfortable emotions as problems to be solved, Blavatsky taught that they should be seen as urgent messages from our higher self, alerting us to misalignments in our thoughts, actions, or life direction. This ancient wisdom, preserved through esoteric traditions and revealed through Blavatsky's work, offers a revolutionary approach to emotional intelligence that goes far beyond conventional psychology. It suggests that by learning to properly interpret our emotional signals, we can access profound spiritual guidance and accelerate our journey toward enlightenment. The implications of this teaching are staggering. Every human being carries within themselves a direct line to divine wisdom, accessible through the language of emotion. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Emotional Guidance. Blavatsky's teachings reveal that emotions operate on multiple planes of existence simultaneously. The physical body experiences emotions as sensations, the astral body processes them as energy patterns, and the mental body interprets them as thoughts and images. However, the source of all emotions originates from the causal body, the seat of the higher self. According to Theosophical doctrine, the higher self exists in a state of perfect knowledge and perpetual awareness of the soul's evolutionary path. It observes our daily choices, relationships, and experiences from a perspective of unlimited wisdom, constantly sending guidance through the emotional system to help navigate toward our highest good. Positive emotions such as joy, love, peace, and enthusiasm indicate alignment with our higher self's intentions. These emotions arise when our thoughts, words, and actions harmonize with our soul's purpose. Blavatsky taught that sustained positive emotions signal that we are walking the correct path and should continue in our current direction. Conversely, negative emotions, anger, fear, sadness, anxiety, or frustration serve as spiritual alarm signals. They indicate that something in our current experience conflicts with our higher self's wisdom. Rather than being problems to eliminate, these emotions are urgent communications requiring immediate attention and course correction. Blavatsky emphasized that the intensity of an emotion corresponds to the urgency of the higher self's message. Mild discomfort suggests minor adjustments are needed, while overwhelming emotions indicate major life changes may be necessary to realign with our spiritual path. The duration of emotions also carries significance. Persistent negative emotions suggest ongoing misalignment, while fleeting emotional responses often relate to temporary situations requiring momentary awareness rather than major life changes. Understanding this emotional anatomy allows practitioners to decode the higher self's guidance with increasing accuracy, transforming emotional experiences from chaotic reactions into purposeful spiritual communication. Chapter 3. The Language of the Soul. Blavatsky taught that emotions communicate through a sophisticated language that transcends words or logical thought. This spiritual language operates through energy frequencies, symbolic imagery, and direct knowing that bypasses the rational mind's filtering mechanisms. Each emotion carries specific information about different aspects of our spiritual journey. Love, in its purest form, indicates recognition of divine truth and unity with all existence. When we feel genuine love, the higher self confirms that we are perceiving reality through spiritual eyes, rather than the illusions of separation created by the ego mind. Fear, according to Blavatsky's teachings, often signals the ego's resistance to spiritual growth. When the higher self guides us toward experiences that will expand our consciousness, the ego mind generates fear to maintain its familiar but limited perspective. Learning to distinguish between intuitive caution and ego-based fear becomes essential for spiritual development. Anger frequently indicates that our personal boundaries or values are being violated. The higher self uses anger to protect our spiritual integrity, alerting us when situations, relationships, or choices compromise our authentic nature. However, Blavatsky warned against expressing anger destructively, advocating instead for using its energy to make necessary changes. Sadness often accompanies the release of outdated beliefs, relationships, or life patterns that no longer serve our evolution. The higher self sometimes guides us through periods of necessary loss, using sadness to facilitate letting go of attachments that limit spiritual growth. Joy represents the higher self's celebration when we align with our true purpose or experience moments of expanded consciousness. These emotional peaks serve as confirmation that we are progressing along our intended spiritual path. Blavatsky taught that mastering this emotional language requires consistent practice and deep self-observation. Through meditation, contemplation, and honest self-examination, individuals can develop the sensitivity needed to accurately interpret their higher self's guidance. Chapter 4. Obstacles to Emotional Wisdom. Blavatsky identified several barriers that prevent modern humans from accessing their emotional guidance system effectively. The primary obstacle is the overactive rational mind, which attempts to explain away or control emotions rather than listening to their deeper messages. Western education and culture, Blavatsky observed, condition people to prioritize logical thinking over intuitive knowing. This intellectual bias causes individuals to dismiss emotions as irrational or unreliable, cutting them off from their most direct source of spiritual guidance. Social conditioning represents another significant barrier. From childhood, people learn to suppress certain emotions deemed unacceptable by family, culture, or religion. This emotional suppression damages the natural communication system between the higher self and the personality, creating internal conflicts and spiritual confusion. Blavatsky also warned about the numbing effects of modern life's distractions. Constant entertainment, consumption, and busyness prevent the quiet introspection necessary to hear the higher self's subtle emotional guidance. The soul's voice becomes drowned out by external noise and internal chatter. Pharmaceutical interventions, while sometimes medically necessary, can also interfere with natural emotional processing. Blavatsky's teachings suggest that while extreme emotional states may require professional intervention, the routine suppression of normal emotional ranges through medication can impede spiritual development. Fear of change presents perhaps the greatest obstacle to following emotional guidance. The higher self often leads individuals away from comfortable but spiritually stagnant situations toward unknown territories that promise growth. The ego mind's resistance to uncertainty can cause people to ignore clear emotional guidance, pointing toward necessary life changes. Religious or spiritual teachings that condemn emotions as sinful or spiritually inferior also block access to higher self-guidance. Blavatsky taught that emotions, properly understood, are sacred communications from the divine aspect of human nature. Overcoming these obstacles requires conscious effort, patience, and often the support of like-minded individuals who understand the spiritual significance of emotional experiences. Chapter 5. Cultivating Emotional Sensitivity. Blavatsky provided specific practices for developing greater sensitivity to emotional guidance from the higher self. These techniques help individuals distinguish between ego-based reactions and authentic spiritual communication through the emotional system. Regular meditation forms the foundation of emotional sensitivity training. Blavatsky recommended daily periods of quiet contemplation where individuals observe their emotional states without judgment or immediate action. This practice develops the inner stillness necessary to perceive subtle emotional guidance that might otherwise be overlooked. Journaling emotions provides another essential tool for developing emotional wisdom. Blavatsky suggested recording not just emotional events, but also the circumstances surrounding them, looking for patterns that reveal the higher self's consistent guidance themes. Over time, individuals can identify their unique emotional guidance signatures. Body awareness practices enhance emotional sensitivity by helping individuals recognize how the higher self communicates through physical sensations. Blavatsky taught that emotions often manifest as energy patterns in specific body regions, and learning to read these energetic signals improves overall guidance reception. Spending time in nature supports emotional clarity by removing artificial distractions and connecting individuals with natural energy patterns that resonate with the higher self's frequencies. Blavatsky emphasized that natural environments facilitate clearer spiritual communication than urban or indoor settings. Creative expression through art, music, writing, or movement provides outlets for emotional energy while simultaneously developing sensitivity to subtle inner promptings. The higher self often communicates through creative inspiration, using artistic expression as a vehicle for spiritual guidance. Studying esoteric literature, particularly works by advanced spiritual teachers, helps individuals recognize the universal patterns of higher self-communication. Blavatsky's own writings serve as guidebooks for understanding how spiritual wisdom manifests through emotional experiences. Building relationships with others who understand and practice emotional spiritual guidance creates supportive environments for developing these abilities safely and effectively. Chapter 6. Practical application of emotional guidance. Blavatsky's teachings provide practical frameworks for applying emotional guidance in daily life decisions. Understanding how to translate emotional signals into appropriate actions transforms abstract spiritual concepts into concrete tools for living more authentically and purposefully. Career decisions often generate strong emotional responses that reveal the higher self's preferences. Blavatsky taught that work aligned with our spiritual purpose produces feelings of enthusiasm, energy, and fulfillment, while misaligned career choices create persistent anxiety, boredom, or frustration. Learning to recognize these patterns helps individuals make vocational choices that support both material needs and spiritual development. Relationship guidance through emotions requires careful attention to how different people affect our emotional state. The higher self uses our emotional responses to others as indicators of spiritual compatibility, karmic connections, or lessons that need learning. Blavatsky emphasized that while initial attraction might be ego-based, sustained emotional harmony indicates deeper spiritual resonance. Living situation decisions, where to live, how to structure daily routines, what environments to frequent, all generate emotional feedback from the higher self. Environments that support spiritual growth produce feelings of peace, clarity, and vitality, while spiritually stagnant situations create restlessness, anxiety, or depression. Financial decisions guided by emotional wisdom often lead to greater prosperity and security than purely logical financial planning. Blavatsky taught that the higher self understands the soul's material needs and guides individuals toward financial choices that support their spiritual mission while providing adequate material resources. Health-related decisions benefit enormously from emotional guidance. The higher self uses physical sensations and emotional responses to communicate about dietary choices, exercise needs, and lifestyle modifications that support optimal well-being. Learning to interpret these signals can prevent illness and promote vitality. Creative and artistic pursuits guided by emotional inspiration often produce work that serves both personal fulfillment and contribution to collective human evolution, aligning individual expression with universal spiritual purposes. Chapter 7. Transforming Negative Emotions. Rather than avoiding or suppressing negative emotions, Blavatsky taught advanced techniques for transforming them into spiritual wisdom and positive life changes. This alchemical approach to emotional processing accelerates spiritual development while reducing suffering. Anger transformation begins with recognizing anger as misdirected spiritual power. The higher self generates anger when our authentic nature is threatened or compromised. Instead of expressing anger destructively, Blavatsky recommended channeling its energy into constructive action that addresses underlying spiritual needs or boundary violations. Fear transformation requires distinguishing between intuitive caution and ego-based anxiety. True spiritual fear alerts us to genuine dangers or inappropriate situations, while ego fear attempts to prevent spiritual growth by maintaining familiar limitations. Learning this distinction allows individuals to honor legitimate warnings while moving beyond self-imposed restrictions. Sadness transformation involves recognizing grief as a natural part of spiritual evolution. The higher self sometimes guides us through necessary losses, relationships, beliefs, or life circumstances that no longer serve our growth. Allowing ourselves to fully experience and process sadness facilitates healthy releasing and creates space for new, more aligned experiences. Anxiety transformation focuses on understanding worry as the ego mind's attempt to control unknown outcomes. Blavatsky taught that chronic anxiety often indicates resistance to the higher self's guidance toward necessary changes. Developing trust in spiritual guidance reduces anxiety while increasing alignment with our authentic path. Depression transformation recognizes prolonged sadness as a signal that major life realignment is needed. Rather than merely treating symptoms, Blavatsky's approach addresses the spiritual causes of depression by helping individuals identify and follow their higher self's guidance toward more fulfilling life expressions. Loneliness transformation reveals isolation as the higher self's call to develop deeper spiritual connections, either with like-minded individuals or with the divine aspects of existence. This emotional signal often precedes significant spiritual awakenings or meaningful relationship developments. Each negative emotion, properly understood and transformed, becomes a catalyst for positive spiritual evolution. Chapter 8. The collective emotional field. Blavatsky's advanced teachings reveal that individual emotions connect to a vast collective emotional field that influences human evolution on a planetary scale. Understanding these connections helps spiritual practitioners contribute positively to humanity's collective consciousness while protecting themselves from harmful emotional influences. The collective emotional field operates through what Blavatsky called the astral plane, an energetic dimension where thoughts and emotions from all humans blend and interact. Individual emotional states both contribute to and draw from this collective reservoir, creating feedback loops that can either elevate or depress collective consciousness. Mass media, according to Blavatsky's prophetic insights, would become a primary tool for manipulating collective emotions, often steering humanity away from higher self-guidance toward fear, division, and spiritual confusion. Learning to recognize and resist these artificial emotional influences becomes essential for maintaining connection with authentic spiritual guidance. Geographic locations accumulate emotional energy over time, creating environmental influences that affect sensitive individuals. Blavatsky taught that places associated with spiritual practice, natural beauty, or positive human activities generate uplifting emotional fields, while locations connected with violence, suffering, or spiritual darkness create oppressive atmospheric conditions. Group meditation and spiritual practice can transform collective emotional fields, raising the consciousness of entire communities or regions. Blavatsky emphasized that groups of individuals aligned with their higher self-guidance possess tremendous power to influence positive collective change. Historical periods of collective emotional upheaval, wars, natural disasters, social transitions, provide opportunities for accelerated spiritual evolution as humanity's higher self communicates through crisis experiences. Understanding these patterns helps individuals navigate challenging times while contributing to positive collective outcomes. Personal emotional hygiene becomes crucial in protecting against negative collective influences while contributing positive energy to the collective field. Regular practices for clearing negative emotions and cultivating positive states benefit both individual development and humanity's spiritual evolution. Chapter 9. Advanced Emotional Alchemy. Blavatsky's most advanced teachings reveal sophisticated techniques for transmuting raw emotional energy into spiritual power and wisdom. These practices, traditionally reserved for initiated students, help serious practitioners accelerate their spiritual development through conscious emotional work. The first principle of emotional alchemy involves recognizing emotions as forms of spiritual energy that can be consciously directed and transformed. Like physical matter, emotional energy cannot be destroyed, only changed from one form to another. Negative emotions contain the same essential energy as positive emotions. They simply require conscious transformation. Breathing techniques form the foundation of emotional alchemy. Blavatsky taught specific breath patterns that help practitioners consciously direct emotional energy. Deep, rhythmic breathing during emotional experiences allows the higher self to transform the energy rather than letting it discharge unconsciously through reactive behaviors. Visualization practices enhance emotional transformation by providing conscious direction for emotional energy. Blavatsky recommended visualizing light, color, or symbolic imagery while experiencing emotions, allowing the higher self to transform the energy into wisdom, compassion, or spiritual power. Sound vibration through chanting, singing, or toning helps transmute emotional energy by aligning it with higher spiritual frequencies. Different sounds resonate with different emotional energies, And learning these correspondences enables practitioners to consciously shift their emotional states. Physical movement practices such as dance, yoga, or walking meditation facilitate emotional transformation by allowing energy to flow through the body rather than becoming stuck in emotional patterns. The higher self uses physical movement to process and transform emotional experiences. Artistic expression serves as an advanced alchemical tool by channeling emotional energy into creative forms that benefit both the practitioner and others. Through art, music, writing, or other creative outlets, negative emotions can be transformed into beauty, wisdom, or healing energy. Service to others provides the ultimate alchemical practice by transforming personal emotional experiences into compassionate action that serves collective spiritual evolution. Chapter 10. Integrating emotional wisdom. The ultimate goal of understanding emotions as higher self-guidance is integration, living daily life with consistent awareness of and responsiveness to this inner spiritual communication. Blavatsky taught that true spiritual mastery involves seamlessly blending emotional wisdom with practical effectiveness in the world. Moment-to-moment awareness forms the foundation of integration. Advanced practitioners develop the ability to recognize emotional guidance as it arises, distinguishing between ego reactions and higher self-communication in real time. This requires sustained mindfulness and practice, but eventually becomes as natural as breathing. Decision-making processes become transformed when emotional guidance is properly integrated. Rather than relying solely on logical analysis or external advice, practitioners learn to consult their emotional responses as a primary source of wisdom about choices and directions. Relationship dynamics shift dramatically when both individuals understand and practice emotional guidance principles. Conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding. Emotional reactions become information to be explored rather than problems to be solved. And spiritual growth becomes a shared journey rather than individual struggle. Professional life integration requires developing the skill to honor emotional guidance while meeting practical responsibilities and social expectations. This often involves creative solutions that serve both spiritual authenticity and worldly effectiveness. Communication with others becomes more authentic and effective when practitioners speak from emotional honesty while respecting others' spiritual journeys. Learning to share emotional insights without imposing them on others develops spiritual maturity and practical wisdom. Daily routine integration involves structuring life to support regular emotional awareness and processing. This might include meditation periods, journaling time, nature walks, or other practices that maintain connection with higher self-guidance throughout busy schedules. Crisis management becomes an opportunity for accelerated spiritual growth when practitioners can access emotional guidance during challenging times. Rather than being overwhelmed by difficult circumstances, they can use emotional wisdom to navigate challenges with greater resilience and purpose. Chapter 11. Common Pitfalls and Misconceptions. Blavatsky warned about several common mistakes that sincere spiritual seekers make when learning to work with emotional guidance. Understanding these pitfalls helps practitioners avoid detours and develop genuine emotional wisdom rather than spiritual delusion. Emotional indulgence represents a primary pitfall where individuals mistake every emotional impulse for higher self-guidance. Blavatsky taught that authentic spiritual guidance requires discrimination between higher self-communication and ego reactions, personal desires, or unconscious patterns. True emotional guidance often contradicts immediate personal preferences. Spiritual bypassing occurs when practitioners use emotional guidance concepts to avoid dealing with practical responsibilities or psychological healing needs. Blavatsky emphasized that higher self-guidance supports effective engagement with worldly duties and personal growth, not escape from them. Projection of personal issues onto spiritual guidance creates another common mistake. When individuals are unwilling to examine their own psychological patterns, they may attribute ego-based reactions to higher self-communication, leading to poor decisions justified by false spiritual reasoning. Isolation from practical feedback can lead practitioners to develop elaborate emotional interpretations disconnected from reality. Blavatsky taught that genuine higher self-guidance produces positive practical results over time, and guidance that consistently leads to problems likely involves misinterpretation. Rigid interpretations of emotional signals prevent flexible response to changing circumstances. While learning basic emotional guidance principles provides helpful structure, Blavatsky warned against creating inflexible rules that ignore the subtle, contextual nature of authentic spiritual communication. Comparing emotional experiences with others can lead to self-doubt or spiritual competition. Each individual's relationship with their higher self is unique, and emotional guidance manifests differently based on personal history, spiritual development, and life circumstances. Impatience with the learning process causes many practitioners to abandon emotional wisdom practices before developing genuine skill. Blavatsky emphasized that mastering emotional guidance requires time, practice, and patience with the gradual development of spiritual sensitivity. Chapter 12. The Future of Human Emotional Evolution. Blavatsky's prophetic vision revealed that humanity stands at a crucial evolutionary threshold where understanding emotions as higher self-guidance becomes essential for continued spiritual progress. Her teachings suggest that those who master emotional wisdom will help guide humanity through its next evolutionary phase. The current global crisis in mental health, according to Blavatsky's perspective, reflects humanity's disconnection from natural emotional guidance systems. As more individuals reconnect with their higher self through emotional wisdom, collective healing and spiritual advancement become possible. Technological advancement, while offering certain benefits, has accelerated humanity's disconnection from natural spiritual guidance. Blavatsky's teachings provide essential tools for maintaining spiritual connection in an increasingly artificial world. Learning to distinguish between authentic emotional guidance and technologically induced emotional states becomes crucial for future human development. Educational systems of the future will need to incorporate emotional wisdom principles to support healthy human development. Blavatsky's insights suggest that teaching children to understand emotions as spiritual guidance could prevent many psychological problems while accelerating spiritual evolution. Scientific understanding of consciousness and emotion will eventually validate many of Blavatsky's teachings about the higher self and emotional guidance. As quantum physics and consciousness research advance, the spiritual dimensions of emotional experience will gain scientific recognition and support. Cultural transformation awaits societies that embrace emotional wisdom principles. When communities understand emotions as spiritual guidance, social structures, governance systems, and economic models will naturally evolve to support rather than suppress human spiritual development. Individual practitioners who master emotional guidance become bridges between current human consciousness and humanity's evolutionary potential. Through their example and influence, they help accelerate collective spiritual advancement, while serving as guides for others seeking authentic spiritual development. The ultimate vision of human emotional evolution involves a species-wide awakening to the spiritual nature of emotional experience, creating a world where higher self-guidance flows freely through human consciousness, supporting both individual fulfillment and collective harmony in service to universal spiritual evolution. What aspects of emotional guidance resonate most strongly with your own spiritual experiences? Have you noticed connections between your emotions and your life's direction that align with Blavatsky's teachings? Share your insights in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the profound wisdom teachings that can transform our understanding of human spiritual potential.